Welcome back to another episode of The Loco Fit Show, where we redefine what healthy means to you. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and this week I'm joined by Coach Jill.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Hi. You're avoiding eye contact because you're trying not to laugh.
Literally, the last intro I just did, I said,
why am I crying?
Because I'm hilarious, because I couldn't remember how to introduce myself. You know when you're in that situation and you just can't make eye contact, otherwise you're going to lose it? Well, that was just us. Yeah. So we're back.
We know who we are.
Depends on the day. Depends on when you're asking me, right?
I got so many days wrong this week.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
when you think it's like a Wednesday and it's like a Monday?
Of course.
That was me. I was like, wait, why aren't these people checking in? I'm like, it's fucking Monday. That's why. And they're
like,
Wednesday.
Oh.
Okay.
You're getting mad at all your clients. Why is everyone
I'm
late?
like, wait, I expected this check-in and this check-in and no, I'm the problem.
Everybody's slacking this week. That was just us because me and Chris just got back from being with my parents for a few days, and we did it like in the middle of the week, and it was just like
it throws everything off.
It completely threw everything off, and we were just over in Fort Myers area, and it's spring break when we're recording this. It's like spring break week, and everybody travels to Florida, whatever. So we kept thinking, it's going to be really busy because of spring break.
Was it not busy?
It was super busy.
Oh.
And we kept saying, because it's spring break, but like everybody was like super old. Like no, not even just like old people, but like 30, 40, 50. Like nobody was on spring break who was why it was so crowded. So we just kept joking every time we'd see like a group of old people, but I would be like, oh, spring break. For like, the geriatric community. So I don't know what was going on. Like Wednesday
Maybe
was
an event.
Lit. It was lit.
Fort Myers break is for everyone.
Yeah, spring break, it's a mindset. It's a lifestyle, spring break. Is that a segue into our topic? No, it's definitely not. Not a good segue, but this is a topic that I think is so important because we see this in terms of working with clients and getting questions just with how they want to look, and it's just really everything, but also just in general on social media. So why you don't look like your favorite influencer?
Yes, it's
dun dun dun.
Such a big topic, and it's super common too. We get clients sometimes who say, and I've had this before, a client might send me a picture actually of what they want to look like. And it's super common with social media too, because you follow these people and you see what they're doing, and you might get frustrated because you're like, oh, I'm doing what this person told me to do, and I'm not where I want to be. And it could be this vicious cycle.
And I would, first and foremost, I think part of it is also just the understanding and the perspective of what you're seeing on social media, right? Like a lot of times they'll see a workout or they'll see a photo or they'll see anything, and they won't necessarily put into perspective how long someone's been doing something, right? We all do this in different ways. It could be someone who's super successful in their business. It could be like, right, like you see someone and they like pop off or they blow up, and it's like, they were doing this for 10 years. They didn't just come out of nowhere, most likely, right? But you're just noticing them and you're just seeing all these things, for the first time. So social media can do that, especially with physique related things, because it shortens the time course of everything and it makes it all so much more dramatic. So first of all, we need to look and think about training history and also just athletic background, because a lot of people who have, these amazing physiques are people who have been training most of their lives. I don't even want to say they're adult, most of their lives, like 3, 4, like they're in sports their whole life. So like that's going to be a very different physique than someone who
is
never
just getting into the gym.
Yeah, never played sports, never worked out, and now they're 30 and they want to start lifting. Like totally different body, just like from the jump.
Yeah, and it not only applies to say like if you're following athletes, because that could be a huge difference. If someone's, and also often you're being unfair to yourself if you're like, hey, why don't I look like this athlete who does this for a living, or this person who may train or need to train more than once a day for their sport, depending on the sport. It could be very unfair to compare yourself to these people based on their training background. And then it can also go the other way, where everyone's starting point is going to be different too. And we talked about this a little bit ago, where some people on Instagram or anyone you follow really in like the fitness space, some people are just starting from a base where maybe they were already like pretty petite or a small person or like a lean person to begin with. And they start training, they add a little bit of muscle mass on their frame, and you might look at them and think, well, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm not having the same results. So everyone's starting point, same thing with like the training age that you mentioned, is super important to consider, because it actually does paint a completely different roadmap for what that process is going to look like for you.
Mm-hmm. Goodness. Sorry, I didn't know. You know why I do this sometimes. No, that's such a good point, because a lot of times we are just completely taking that part out of the equation. And it's like, if someone is literally, especially like, let's say like for an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. They're training sometimes twice a day, right? Like for their sport. And it's like, you're looking at like what they're eating, right? And it's like, that is not even on the realm of possibility for most people, right? Like, again, take all these factors into consideration: training age, genetics, age, just in general, output, muscle mass. And you're taking that and trying to overlay that onto your life, where a lot of people just are super sedentary. They don't have that like mature training age. They don't have that background, right? Like they don't, especially like, let's also say too, like say you are just getting into training. It's not even just like the absolute like weight and volume and all of that of course does play a role, but like someone who has been training for a long time, they're going to be able to get a lot out of one session. Whereas if you're just learning something, like you're just learning those movement patterns, you're not even getting as much out of the same session, right? So it's like, you can't even directly compare these two things. And oftentimes we do that. And then we're like, oh my gosh, well now, like you said, you compare yourself, completely different starting points. And now you almost feel like this like failure. Yeah. And that's where we really want people to understand these things, not because we want to highlight the differences amongst people, but more so to be like, hey, like this is not the same starting place, and like that's okay. Yeah. But we have to be realistic with that, because otherwise we're going to always paint ourselves into this corner of like just being unhappy with like what we have. Yeah. Or people could take that in another way too, where it's like, oh, this actually doesn't work. This is all BS, right? When we know it works, it's just a matter of like, hey, your timeline is just going to look way different from maybe this person you're looking up to. Not to mention, again, like the time that you accumulate doing these things over and over again. So it could avoid a lot of frustration, but also help you with keeping your eyes on the more important things when you are working at this process, instead of just, hey, like, am I there yet? Or, oh, the fact that you are eating better, the fact that you are moving your body, the fact that you are learning more about training and how to do that effectively, where you're going to get so much more out of this by focusing on those more important things day to day versus the overarching goal you might set for yourself to look like a specific person. And that's not even mentioning the fact that everyone's bodies are going to be different to begin with. Everybody's body looks different, has different muscle insertions, has a different response. Like genetics reign supreme when it comes to physique changes. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear about that. Like, yeah. And it's not to say that it's a limiting factor to where you can't have a great physique, but like a perfect example is I have, pretty narrow hips. I have a pretty wide waist. I have a large rib cage, and I'm pretty broad up top, just structurally speaking, right? If I look at people who have very, very tiny waists and larger hips and just curvier in general, if I consistently tried to compare myself to someone like that, I am always going to be upset, because I am never in a million years going to have that body type, because I literally can't. Like, it's just physically impossible, right? So why would I continue to do that to myself? I can appreciate their bodies. I can go, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I can even say, wow, it would be so great if I had like a smaller waist and wider hips, and I can still want that. Yeah. But I have to say, okay, I can want that, but like, what can I do instead? Okay. Yeah. Like, where can I bring myself? Where can I make changes? Okay. I can grow my glutes. I'm not going to be able to grow my hips, but I can grow my glutes, I can grow my legs, I can grow my back, so I can change these different things and have a more curvier appearance, but I have to work with what I got. Yeah. And it's the same way as I can sit around all day and be like, wow, I really wish I had curly hair, but I don't. I got pin straight hair, and that's never going to change. Like, it's just not. What if I like woke up one day and I had like crazy curly hair? Wouldn't that be? What if I woke up one day and I just like lost a rib, like, or two, to make my waist smaller? You're like, whoops, how did that happen? Oh, it just fell out of bed. It just fell out. So weird. And you get up and it's like in your bed. Okay. Anyways, these are the things that we think about. But genetics truly reign supreme there. And like, even, certain people have certain, shapes and sizes of muscles just again, just based on their genetics, and certain things are going to stand out more. Like their, abs are a really big one, right? Like not only do people hold body fat there differently, right? There's also just people who have like different shaped abs that like stand out way more than like other people, right? Or big shoulder caps versus small ones, and like calves. Oh my God, calves are a huge one.
Oh my God, don't even get me started.
Like, I know. We're gonna actually start crying and have a mental breakdown.
Have we talked about calves on the podcast? I think we did last time.
Or was
it after we recorded?
I can't remember. We probably did.
They're gonna be like, guys, we already talked about that.
We get it.
You get your sad calf story.
You have a crippling problem with your
my
calves.
chunky calves.
Literally, so chunky. I don't know.
There's
why.
muscle sit somewhere there. I just haven't met it yet.
There is a muscle there, but it doesn't look quite.
There is a muscle. That's where it ends.
We do. Period. There is a muscle. Period. So yeah, if we just looked at calf influencers all day. No, just kidding. But
oh my God, imagine.
But
anyway,
I'm sure. Listen,
there's probably a niche for everything.
There is
at this point.
Definitely a niche for everything. But with genetics and just responses in general, right? Like we have to take all that into consideration and recognize that you might not have this one thing or these few things, but you might have other things, right, that someone wants.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter what someone wants or not wants. And you can still want that. Like I can still want curly hair. I could still want, curvier hips, but a want is not something that I can then fixate on, right? I can say, okay, this is an unrealistic want. What are some things that I can do instead? And I think it's important to be able to recognize those things that maybe you get hung up on, because I think that a lot of clients are in a position when they're seeking out a body type that they want to have or emulate, or like you said, sending a photo or whatever it might be. Sometimes they don't even really recognize why they like that, right? Like they might be like, I just love how this looks.
Yeah. Like, is it the actual physique, or is there like a certain part of that that you want to gain?
And if there is something, okay, what are some things that we can fix? And what are some things that we can work on, improve, grow, et cetera, shrink, whatever it is? And what are some things that we can't? And so like the things that we can't,
what can we do instead to get you to a place where you're
closer there and not fixated on the thing that we're like have zero control over, right?
Yeah.
And we've worked with many people who have much more adaptive metabolisms, and unfortunately adaptive is not the best term, like not the best situation in this. We always use adaptive in a positive way outside of metabolism. But a lot of people that we work with are not just going to be these people that you see, oh, I started a diet and I dropped all this weight super quickly, which again, that's kind of, is that true, is that not? That's the whole smoke and mirrors of social media anyways. But everybody has a different, metabolic response. Some clients gain muscle super quickly. Some clients, lose muscle super quickly, right? There's so many different things. Yeah. And we have to take all of that into consideration. On top of, hormonal status, on top of age, on top of, is someone, taking any performance enhancing drugs, which is certainly possible and not a problem.
Especially on social media when you're comparing yourself to some people.
Yes.
Which is, a frustrating part for sure.
And nobody needs to disclose that, right? Like as a influencer or literally anyone anywhere, you don't need to disclose those things, right? But as a consumer, you have to recognize that there's a
possibility.
Yeah. And that's, again, a reality that we all have to face and like be okay with. And it's not to say, oh, because someone looks like this, they're on steroids. It's not how it works.
Definitely not.
Definitely not that easy, right? But it is something to keep in mind, because not even necessarily with how someone looks, but let's say we're talking about someone who's training multiple times a day and recovering. Oh my gosh, how are they recovering from this? Well, that's certainly a component there, right? That is a whole, performance enhancing, right? So it's not always just about like, oh, you take steroids and you sit around and you get super jacked. It's like, what is it allowing someone to do? Right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like genetics also get like, I feel like maybe it gets a lot of hate as like a conversation topic, just because someone might take that and think, well, I just don't have the genetics for it. When you can work with your genetics and get to a place where you have a body type and a physique that you want to and you feel comfortable in. But at the same time, like you talked about with like even just the way your body is structured, same goes for like even where you lose body fat and put on body fat first. That is all going to be dependent person to person. So it applies to the same idea of, well, I've lost weight, but like I still look this way and not this way. And that again, like you need to remember that's a very individualized thing. So we can't obviously spot reduce, but again, like if we're getting closer to a physique that you feel comfortable in, we also need to consider that your physique is also going to change in different ways from what someone else may be experiencing.
Oh, dude, it's so frustrating because I always wish we could change where we lose fat, right? Because it's always like everybody has these different areas. And, that's one thing that sometimes can change a little bit over time, but just generally speaking, like everybody's going to have like those tough and stubborn areas where it's really, really hard to lose. And it's like the first to gain. And same thing with muscle. When we're talking about building muscle, like some people are like calf or really anywhere, right? Like, man, I really, really have a hard time with this building this. And I think people don't like the genetic discussion because it's like anything that is such like naturally born, innate to us. People don't like discussing that because it can feel limiting, but I don't think that it is limiting. I think it's just a reality to accept. And the more that we think it's limiting, the more that it is going to limit us, right? It's just like, some people very clearly, like math comes really easy to them, right? Like some people just like learn things and like, okay, I took a math class and now I'm, acing calculus and I can do physics and I can do all this stuff. Like for some people, like that is their reality, right? They didn't necessarily ask for that or whatever it might be like, but that is easier for them. And the same thing with, building muscle for other people. Right? Like they just build it like, so there's all these different components where it's like, it's not like just because someone has a lot of intelligence in one area doesn't make them better or worse. It's just their reality. Same thing here, right? Like doesn't make us worse guys that we can't grow our calves. Okay. Like I want everybody to know that.
Just feel bad for me.
Just feel bad for us. But really like, I think if we believe that it's limiting, it will be.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
And I think that that's where we have to reduce that like discomfort and just be like, no, like I'm just facing this like head on. And okay, what can I change? And what really am I looking at that I like? Again, like to your point, like what do I like about, this person or this situation or this group that I'm sharing with, a coach or friend or whatever. Like I'm aspiring to be like this.
It doesn't even have to be physical too. It's like, maybe it's the confidence that I want to feel in my skin. It doesn't even have to be how you actually look at the end of that process, but is this going to give you confidence? Is that what is that the root of like what you actually want to gain from this process, or what you think you're going to gain from this physique in particular?
And that will come across in photos, in videos, in meeting someone, right? Like that's like it's like one of those like intangible things where you're just like, man, like that person is like so confident, they're so smooth, they're so charismatic, like whatever it is. And that is maybe that's what you're actually like going for, right? And you can gain that by, working on it. For first and foremost, you can work on those kinds of things, right? You can work on your confidence, but that also can be a really great byproduct of like your fitness journey.
Yeah, doing the things that help you help you feel better.
And maybe you don't have the 8-pack that so-and-so has, right? That like, that's what you like love about their aesthetic. Yeah, the 12-pack that they have. But maybe it's like, yeah, I can see the outline of my abs and I'm way more confident and like comfortable in my skin. And like, I'm going to rock this. So like, that's a huge part of this. And that's where, when we're talking about like this topic in particular, like, looking like your favorite influencer, right? And we're using this in a sense of like, typically, observing someone on social media or whatever it might be. And like, that is sometimes where that drawback comes in because we are not necessarily seeing like what's going on behind the scenes, right? Or we're seeing, angles and lighting and people like,
and a lot of people won't show everything that they're actually doing online, or they may not be 100% truthful. And one snapshot is not the entirety of that person's lifestyle.
No. I think people know how impactful things like lighting and angles are, but I sometimes think that people don't understand the actual magnitude of it. Like we know it's important, but, clients will send in photos, like they're sending progress photos. They're just standing straight on, like not smiling, like horrible lighting. And they're like, why don't I look like this person? It's like, this wasn't even a comparable like attempt at look like you're not even trying to look like this person, because this is, again, certain lighting, certain posing, certain this, and I don't expect everybody to know all that, but like as coaches and people who have competed and, you know, contorted ourselves in weird ways to look a certain, literally that's what competing is, in terms of posing, like that makes a huge difference. And this is not to say that like people are bad for filming or posting their best angles. Like, hello, if I take 3 photos,
probably does that,
and there's a better photo, like guess which one I'm choosing? The better one, right? Or the one that I think is better. Yeah. Someone else you could look at that and be like, no, I like 2, or I'm like, I like 1. He could like 3. Like there's all these different, like everybody has a different preference, right? Yeah. But you're generally going to gravitate understandably towards the one that looks best for you. But that is a huge thing. And there are people who, I mean, even I know this, you know, and we can still get caught up in it, you know, people with, you know, good lighting and makeup, and like there's a bunch of people who, I didn't even realize this, can use a like filter on a video for makeup product, like a smoothing filter. And I'm like,
there's a body filter too, oh my God, where you can like filter out how your waist looks, or so this is like beyond photoshopping, because to me, I think photoshopping is like a, not even, you know, editing photos has been around since photos have been being taken. So like, that's not a surprise to me, but the like, hey, like here's a, you know, my makeup video, it's like blurred. Just blur.
Like, what? Yeah. And there's this girl I follow, and she'll post stuff. She doesn't put any filters on her stuff. And she shows doing makeup like sometimes in like different lighting and stuff. Like this is a, you know, ring light, studio light. This is like what it looks like naturally. This is what because that's the same thing. Like I'll do my makeup sometimes in the bathroom, and I'm like,
why does this look like garbage?
What the fuck? Like, am I like, what is happening? Okay? Like, am I okay? No. Next question. But
we knew this.
We all knew this. But like, I think it's a great reminder to be like, okay, no, it's not that I put this on bad, or it's not that I, you know, have terrible skin, or have whatever it is. Like, you know, it's like, this is just the lighting that I'm in, right? Like that's okay. So the same thing with, you know, physique stuff. If we're looking at certain, you know, angles and different things like that, that all matters. How you wear your clothes matters, right? Like you can put on, like I could, like, I know that sounds really silly, but like,
no, I'm just thinking about it myself. I'm just like, I've tried things on and I'm like, this does not look how I imagined it would.
Nope. And I could literally look at an outfit that someone's like training in or whatever, right? And I could be like, wow, like that looks amazing. That looks
so cute. And then I put it on and I'm like,
whoa,
I look like I'm ready for bed.
Yeah. And then alternatively, like there's some stuff that other people maybe don't look as good in, but like it fits my body, my proportions, like my physique, and I'm going to choose outfits that highlight that. Yeah, you know, like it's like there is a limited amount of things that look good on people. Like I can't wear everything. Like certainly not. Like I have certain styles that fit me better, that look better, so I stick with those. You know, so it's kind of like that's where we have to start to regain. Like our, like, I know it sounds so silly, but we all get so caught up in that, you know. There are so many, I was just, at my favorite store, Aritzia, when Chanel was in town, and we were just trying stuff on, and, you know, again, I'm like, oh, this looks great. This is so cute. This is trying it on. And I'm like, no. And, you know, I could be getting self-conscious about it, but I'm like, you know what? That's
it
just
is what it is. Yeah.
This is not made for my body, and like that's okay, you know what I mean? Yeah. Some of the stuff that she was trying on, she looks amazing, would not look good at me, and then vice versa. It's like it's all good.
Yeah, I see like those cute like sweat sets, and I'm like, oh yeah, I tried it on, and I put the top on
a sweat set that I'm like, oh my god, your sweats are so cute.
I put this together myself, but it didn't have like a matching top. But if I see like the hoodies that go with it, I put that on, and my torso is so short where I'm like, I just look like I'm like.
It's just a little.
I'm
much.
Ready for bed.
It's a little much. Yeah, you need like a.
I still wear
it,
but
like a mini crop.
Yeah, I still wear it either way, but
it
is what it is. Yeah,
like I couldn't do
it
either.
And I think knowing that when it comes to like your physique goals, it's gonna take so much more pressure off of you mentally. You're gonna feel better about where you're at, and you're actually, I think, gonna get a lot more from what you're doing because you don't have that pressure on you to. Oh my god, like I don't look like this person yet, you know, because you already know this is what's realistic, this is where I'm at, what are all these other considerations, and I think it's just going to make the process a lot better and a lot more enjoyable.
And I want to circle back to what you talked about with the, you know, what you're seeing on social media might not be the whole picture. And again, I'm a really big, you know, advocate of you don't need to show everything, right? No. Like I truly feel like it's so exhausting as someone who is just trying to share stuff to feel like you have to share everything, right? Like it truly is. But again, as the consumer, you have to remember, okay, I'm only seeing part of it. So you showed me something earlier where it was the person was like watched their video and like tried to calculate the food for them. So like talk about that, because I think that's a perfect example of this.
Yeah, there was someone, and it was kind of in the realm of like similar idea, like why don't I look like this influencer? More in the realm of like, oh, is this healthy? Is what they're doing sustainable? Is what they're doing like, does this make them a good role model or a bad role model? And it was kind of centered around like a full day of eating video where this person calculated all the calories this person was eating in the day that they shared. And they kind of wanted to come to the conclusion of like, is this even like, is this actually real? Like, should I know I can't eat this little, or I'm supposed to eat this much food? And I think they were kind of getting lost in like the weeds in a way where, first of all, this is one day out of 365 days a year. And at the same time, you're kind of coming to this conclusion based on a lot of information you're lacking. And that's also, it's, similar idea with these full days of eating, and the reason I don't post any of them, because people would, one, be bored, and also two, what I'm doing day to day is for me. It's not going to apply to every single person. If you're eating the food I'm eating or eating the amount of food I'm eating, there's no guarantee that that's what you need for your goals. Not everything on the internet is tailored for you.
Nope. And I think that actually, it's funny. Like after seeing this, I was like, I want to make a full day of eating video now, just because, just despite it. Not just kidding. But I think it was first of all, like the perception of unless the person was showing you like the exact portions, you're making an estimate, right? And they made some number like that looks like 1,200 calories, which most people, unless they're actively trying to diet, are not eating that little. Like they're just not, you know what I mean? Like unless someone is actively like, hey, here's me in a deficit plan. And I feel like that person would have probably said that. Yeah. Because most people do those kinds of things.
They would give like, context, I think.
Yeah. If I'm prepping for a show and I'm gonna be like, hey, this is really low. 1,200 calories is much lower than people think. You know what I mean? Like it really is. Yeah. Unless you're eating like zero protein. Right, which then that's like a normal amount of food, like 1,200 carbs and fats.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, for sure.
But adding protein in the mix, like that's going to be a little bit harder. But it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, so you probably saw, some snapshots of the food, like you don't know exactly what's in that. And to your point, it's just one day out of all of these. And how are we really going to judge this person is like a good or a bad role model?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, that's a really harsh judgment, like to say that about someone when you see like,
especially like we have no context in the video. Like, is this person telling you to eat what they're doing?
So much, like missing so many data points here. So much context is just thrown out the window. And I think that's a really great point that you mentioned, like, is this made for you? Right. I think there's a huge difference when people are saying, hey, I'm just sharing what I'm doing versus saying, hey, you should do this. Like if I made a video and I was like, you should eat this. Totally different.
I do what I want.
I
do what I want. You're not my real mom.
So I think it's one of those things where it's like, that's where like the language matters, right? I would definitely have more of a problem if someone was saying like, hey, you have to do this to do. If they're just sharing what they're doing, like, that's just them choosing to share something. And I think that we always have to take all those things with a grain of salt. Same thing with training, right? Like you see a training session from someone, right? Especially when we're talking about like influencer stuff, right? There's a lot of people who are just shooting content just to shoot content. And some people are doing that because they don't want to interrupt their actual training session. Love that. Good to go. Like, because I think that that's important because if you don't want to interrupt your training session, you want to film a few things. Cool. If you're constantly only sharing like just these like whack job workouts and, like grab a partner and do a fire drill and, jump over this thing, like, whoa, like how is this helpful? Right. Like that is one of those things where it's like,
okay. I don't have a training partner. I don't have friends.
Right. Jill's like, I was talking to a spider earlier.
The giant spider that Steven didn't kill and then told me about.
Yeah, that's the worst part. If he had like just let it be, you wouldn't have known. Yeah. And it would have been fine.
This is stuff I don't want to know about.
But now that he told you about it, no.
And he was smirking about it too. I'm like,
Of course he was. Of course he was. I would be more surprised if he wasn't. But it's one of those things where like, okay, if you're just constantly only, or let's just, if someone's filming that, that's on them. But if you're constantly consuming someone's content who's only posting those kinds of workouts, just know they are not doing that for their workouts, nor should you be. right? Like that's the context of that is just for views. And that's where we have to say, okay, am I following this person because I like what they look like and they're doing something cool and crazy? That's fine. Like whatever, subscribe. But if you're following that and going, oh my gosh, I need it, like that's how I'm going to get their body.
This is how they got their physique.
That's where we have to say, okay, probably not how they achieved this physique. And taking all the other things into consideration, their training age, their training history, their genetics,
how they respond
to things, how long they've been doing this, right? If they post up a crazy workout, once a week, that's not necessarily going to yield those like results. And I think that everybody just has to, as a consumer, we just have to become more informed on saying, okay, what am I looking at and how am I letting this affect me? Because if this is affecting me and thinking that I need to go train like this or whatever, well, maybe that person, you don't need to follow them anymore, or you have to change your mindset around that. Like either or. There's two options here.
So I think there's a healthy amount of distance that needs to be made between the stuff we consume and then what we do with our personal goals. But I think keeping that distance and, keeping knowing that there are tons of variables that play into these things, you're going to have such a better time if you don't put so much weight into hey, like why aren't I in this person's body yet?
For sure. For sure. You're going to enjoy it so much more. Like you're going to enjoy that journey. You're going to enjoy those changes. And then when you get there, you're going to be like, wow, like I am so proud of myself. And like you said, taking that pressure off of the situation, because it's like, why? Like what is, there is really no rush. And the more that we put that rush on ourselves, the more we put ourselves in that like limited box position, we're really not going to break out of that. And our thoughts are so powerful, probably the most powerful thing that we have, to be like super honest. And if we are we could be constantly putting in the work, like doing all of the things, but if you are always talking down to yourself and negatively and thinking about how much you're limited, how far you are and how you don't have any resources, like this is literally conditioning yourself to never get where you want to be. And it is like such an important thing to start actively understanding, oh, I'm doing that again. Okay, let me stop that. Yeah. Right? And it's not going to say that you're never going to have those days. Trust me, there are days when I wake up and I am like super self-conscious, talking down to myself. Like we all do it,
We're all the meanest to ourselves.
Oh, well,
for sure.
That is for sure.
It's really hard to stop because sometimes you don't even notice you're doing it. But stopping yourself in your tracks and redirecting, it's going to be a big help.
And that's where coaching can come in, right? Because there are so many times where, and I do this all the time, when a client says something, I like to literally say like, okay, using your words, this is what you said about the situation, right? Because like if they say something like, I'm feeling fluffy or I'm this fit, I'm not going to say that because then they're going to think, oh, Lauren said that. Like, no. And I'll literally go back and be like, so using your words, this is what you said, right? Because sometimes they don't even realize that they're doing it, right? And that's, again, where a good coach can come in and say, hey, you've been kind of talking down to yourself about this.
There's a lot of negative self-talk happening here.
Let's move past this. Like we got to start working on this, because otherwise, and it's not to say that you can't hold yourself accountable, because you can still have a good positive image about yourself and say, you know what? Yeah, I've kind of been slacking on my shit. I need to get more on top of it. Like that is okay. That's not negative at all. That's, again, reality. Yeah. But if we are constantly tearing ourselves down, we're never going to make that forward progress. So a coach can be really helpful there, because there's, if you have someone in your life, whether it's, friends or a significant other or family, like that can be really helpful, but there's usually way more emotion related there to where if, family or, partner says something, sometimes we either don't believe it or we take it even like offensively, which I know I do.
It's so fun because like, it's like Steven will tell me something or tell me to do something, and then I'll hear the same thing from someone else. And he's like, I just told you to do that like 3 times already. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah, you did.
You'll get the credit.
And then, I'll credit everybody here. but it is so, it is, dealing with those types of dynamics is definitely different, which is where having a coach or just someone who's
that extra sounding
third party is really nice. Like
for sure.
we're involved, but not quite as involved. And there's much like we certainly have great relationships with our clients, and there's like an emotional tie there, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same magnitude, the same feeling as like a partner or family, because those can just be a lot more like touchy and inflammatory. And, you know, I get questions about that all the time, not to go on a total tangent, but about people wanting to like help people in their life, you know, and like help them change.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
And it's really tricky I know it's like a totally other topic. I won't go too long, but it could be very tricky. Depending. I've had my entire family as clients before, and it could be a lot.
But it wasn't because you like forced them to do that. It was because then they finally came to you for it. Yeah. I think where people get messed up is they try to be like, why aren't you doing this? Or
never like that.
Look at me, like what I'm doing now. And the other person, maybe even if the person isn't saying that, like the other party is kind of internalizing it that way. So it's almost better to just like in those kind of close situations. Yeah, here's my actions.
I'm gonna just do my thing.
Yeah,
I'll exist. If you want to come by,
and
I'm
you're
all ears.
You know, you're living the actions that you're, you know, could be telling them to do, right? So they see that enough, and then they go, okay, now I feel comfortable enough to like reach out because of that, not because you were like, hey, you should be doing this. Hey, anytime I've tried that, does not work. It just you have to do the more
like the
indirect
whole, like,
approach.
It's like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. And then, like you said, then 5 minutes later, they go do that same thing because someone else said it, right? So anyways, little side quest of a story.
I love side quests.
But yes, our favorite. But we really wanted to touch on this because it is just so prevalent. And I think that a lot of clients can get in their own head about not looking like, you know, a certain person or being able to perform a certain way. And I think their comparison can be healthy. It's not to say that comparison is ever or is always bad, because it's not, right? Like again, it's just, that is a reality of life. And I think that it can be a good benchmark to look at, you know, kind of other people and where you want to be. But we have to look at it in terms of, okay, do I have all of the data points? Like, what is the full picture here? Yeah. And what can I change versus what is fixed? And like,
and that comparison too could be like, not only, again, like kind of going back to like the physical stuff, but it's like, what does this comparison give me? Like, that's going to help me feel my best, like confidence wise, like, you know, that can translate over into so many areas.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's, if we can always loop it back to those types of things, and not just, hey, what do I look like? How am I going to feel when I do these things? That is huge. And that keeps people, you know, dedicated and on target and on the path when they want to fall off. Yeah. So if we can always loop it back to a bigger why, certainly more helpful. So you might not look like your favorite influencer right now, but it doesn't mean that you can never have the physique and the confidence that you want. We just have to maybe use different methods, and also just look at a different time course instead of just looking at these short chunks of time, which unfortunately social media has rotted all of our brains into thinking
brain rot,
how quick things happen, when in reality they always have and always will take quite a long time. So we hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. If you have any questions for us, you can submit them anonymously through the link in our show notes. So put as much detail as you want if it's a specific question, if you just want to add topics in there. And for all other information about coaching services, to join our newsletter. We've been killing our newsletter again. So you guys, if you want to get on that, you can visit redefinehealthybrands.com, and we will talk to you guys next week.
See you soon, baboon.